Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Dear global audience, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all around the world. Welcome to our one-day virtual conference on Guru Tegh Bahadur. The Department of Religious Studies at the University of California, Riverside, and the Dr. Jawaharlal Singh Saini Endowed Chair in Sikh and Punjabi Studies have jointly organized this International Sikh Studies Conference on the theme of the relevance of Guru Tegh Bahadur's teachings and sacrifice in modern times. The 400th birth anniversary of Guru Tegh Bahadur is being celebrated not only in India, but also throughout the world. We have invited scholars to explore any aspect of the ninth Guru's life, his inspired utterances, Bani, and his noble sacrifice from a variety of disciplinary and interdisciplinary approaches. We have invited graduate students to present their current research on Guru Tegh Bahadur in this online conference. We have also invited community representatives to participate in this virtual conference to provide the community perspective. Let me now introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Harjeet Singh Gill, who is internationally acclaimed linguist. Dr. Gill is Professor Emeritus at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, and Professor of Eminence at Punjabi University, Patiala. He was a professor of linguistics for over 30 years. Dr. Gill has published 7 books: A Reference Grammar in Punjabi, 1962, Linguistic Atlas of the Punjab, 1972, A Fulkari from Bathinda, 1975, The Semiotics of Conceptual Structures, a collection of articles since 1970 to 1996. Baba Nanak, 2003, The Language of the Adi Granth with phonetic transcription of the entire text, 2019, and The Cosmic Vision of Baba Nanak, 2020. We will know more about him after the keynote. I will request the global audience to please use Q&A mode to ask any question. We will then present them to Dr. Gill at the end of his keynote address. Now I hand over the virtual podium to Professor Gill.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Sri Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. First of all, I thank the University of California and especially Professor Pashaura Singh, his colleagues, his students, and his friends all over the world. It's a great honor to be able to speak on this very important subject. Let us begin with, I'm going to talk primarily on the martyrdom of Guru Tegh Bahadur, and after that, his philosophical discourse. The legend has it that the Kashmiri Pandits came to Guru Tegh Bahadur and requested his help as they were being persecuted by the then political power headed by Aurangzeb. There is also an account by an eminent scholar of Sikhism, who says that Guru Tegh Bahadur was traveling through Punjab, and wherever he went, there was sort of a Kisan movement, that the farmers of Punjab were being persecuted with more taxes and all kinds of things, and they also requested his help. These are historical events. It refers to the socio-political situation of the period. Now, from the very outset, I want to make it very clear that it is not an affair of Hindu-Sikh versus Islam. Aurangzeb was emperor. He had power, political power, but he did not represent Islam. He represented probably a certain ideology of Islam, a certain view of Islam. So we should not think of Guru Tegh Bahadur as a sacrifice in terms of Sikh Hindu versus Islam. It is simply a question of, like Guru Nanak said, Hak Paraya Nanka, Usur Usgaya. See, the tyrant can be a Hindu, tyrant can be a Muslim. The fight is between Kood and Sach. Like Guru Nanak said, Kood Raja, Kood Parja, Kood Sab Sansar. At that time, that was the situation. There was Kood everywhere. But Guru Nanak also said that Kood Nikhute Nanka, Kodik Sach Rahi. So, on the one hand, there was Kood everywhere. And Guru Tegh Bahadur's sacrifice was the triumph of Sach over Kood. This is the way I try to understand it. Now, what I want to do is, I want to read a few shloks of Guru Tegh Bahadur, which I have interpreted in English, and we'll see the main themes of his philosophical discourse. Let us begin. There is but one serenity. There is none other than the sublime verity. Nanak, in its discerning, in its devotion, is saved the devotee. In its meditation, there is absolute eternity. Discern and devote, stay steady and serene. Nanak, the being recedes into oblivion, into unknown horizon. Beyond all discourses of deference and decimation, beyond all differences of gold and iron, Nanak, the devotee, transcends all prejudices to achieve eternal salvation. There is no complaint, no concern. There is no friend, no foe. Nanak, the devotee, transcends all prejudices to achieve eternal salvation. There is no fear of the other, no desire to frighten the other. Nanak, the wise, stays serene and steady in all states of mind and soul. There is no fear, no faction, all ignorance is diffused. The Creator transcends all time and space. With discerning and differentiating, there is success, there is celebration. In discourse, in articulation, there is discerning of the sublime form of the Creator. There is no death, no decay. There is eternal life. Like a drop on this crest of water, like its rise and fall, Nanak, the world loses its equilibrium in a moment of storm. These are a few shlokas in the beginning. I'll read a few others at the end of my lecture. There are two themes as I discern. The theme of suffering and this theme of life and death. To understand these themes, I would like to go back to Guru Nanak, the Guru of Guru Tegh Bahadur. Guru Tegh Bahadur was the ninth metaphysical incarnation of Guru Nanak. So, to be able to understand the discourse of suffering and the discourse of life and death, I go back to Guru Nanak. Let us begin with the suffering. Guru Nanak says, Dukh daru sukh rog paya, ja sukh tam na hoi. It is followed by Diva mera ek naam, dukh vich paya tel. It is followed by Sagle dukh amrit kar piwe, bahod dukh na paeda. Then finally, dukh sukh do, samkar jane bura pala sansar. These are a number of reflections. We begin with the enunciation where dukh, suffering, is considered a remedy and sukh, indulgence, a disease. It is followed by the most remarkable statement, Diva mera ek naam, dukh vich paya tel. Please listen carefully. The lamp of enlightenment is lit by the oil of suffering. I repeat, the lamp of enlightenment is lit by the oil of suffering. This is the most significant enunciation about suffering. Then, if there was any doubt about Guru Nanak's earlier enunciation, this highly charged conceptual statement is lucid without any ambiguity. It is reinforced by the following advice when he says that we should drink all this suffering as amrit, as nectar. Sagle dukh amrit kar pive. And finally, this distinction of dukh sukh is in any way irrelevant. The conceptual opposition is simply resolved. One should not bother for one or the other. For Baba Nanak, and hence, and consequently for Guru Tegh Bahadur, dukh, that is suffering, is neither a curse nor a calamity. It is the cosmic celebration of mind and soul. This is the discourse of the first theme. Now, the second theme, the same theme of life and death. So at the simple anthropological level, Guru Nanak says, Jo aya so chalsi, amar so gur kartar. This is the whoever is born dies. Then the same Guru Nanak says, na koi aave, na koi jaye. And he even goes on to say, ast, nast, eko now. And there is even a more significant statement, pronunciation. Na ho, na main ho, hova, nanak sabd vichar. Here is an excellent example of how Baba Nanak operates at two levels of reality. At the anthropological level, obviously, whosoever comes leaves. Jo aaya so chalasi. Whosoever is born dies. At another level, the cosmological level, none comes, none leaves. Only the creator is eternal. And finally, to believe or not to believe, asked, nast, echo now. To believe or not to believe is one and the same thing. This is the paradox of absolute existence and absolute non-existence. In the Indian philosophical tradition, only Buddha is supposed to have stated that there is no difference between existence and non-existence. For Baba Nanak, it is much more than that. Not only the distinction between existence and non-existence is obliterated, even the belief in the highly complex, conceptualized Nirankar, the formless, is paradoxical. In a way, what do we mean when we say believe? Believe in what? In Nirankar, the formless, beyond time or space, beyond being and becoming, and most importantly, beyond existence. Then how can we have this abstract conceptualized entity confined to a place of worship in any form whatsoever? You see, as far as I am concerned, especially with his philosophy of suffering, Guru Nanak as a thinker, as a philosopher, presents a definitive epistemological cut in the Indian tradition. He constitutes his discourse step by step. In the beginning, at the initial level, it addresses itself to the anthropological reality, to the political reality like Kood Raja, Kood Parja, Kood Sab Sansar. Then there is such that is truth. It is an eternal truth. It is not it's not a anthropological truth. It is the truth that holds the Brahman, the holds all life and death, all that is that will be. And then one after the other, na koi aave na jaye, na ko hoa na ko hoye, ast nast eko na. These are statements of cosmic reverberation. These are statements of epistemology. As far as I see, with these enunciations, Guru Nanak slowly and slowly constitutes a metaphysical discourse which becomes, in its architectonic structure, conceptual structure, the definitive epistemological cut in the Indian metaphysical tradition. You see, we have to understand what is a discourse. A discourse, even in the Indian tradition, the Nyaya Visheshika tries to explain the nature of discourse in the same way. All micro-concepts and concepts within a discourse are dialectically interrelated with each other. They constitute a discourse, which is a unique discourse, whose architectonics is slowly and slowly constituted. Such micro-concepts cannot be taken out of the discourse and compared with some other discourse. See? We must, the need of the hour, as I see it, is to respect the discourse of the other, the epistemological discourse of the other. Right? And this is the only way we can understand the discourse of Guru Tegh Bahadur also, because it is the discourse of the philosophical, the epistemological discourse of Guru Nanak that is also the legacy of Guru Tegh Bahadur. I would like to go back to that one of the most important statement and also the most disturbing statement, that is asked, nast, echo now. That means to believe or not to believe is one and the same thing. The atheist and atheist are two sides of the same coin. Now, what does it mean? How can we discern this highly complex statement? You see, this is how I see it. No wonder Baba Nanak said, asked, nast, echo now. To believe or not to believe is one and the same thing. To believe in what? A highly complex, abstract, conceptualized entity that is formless, beyond time and space, beyond birth or death. In philosophical reflections, there are a number of other epithets. When God is defined as logos, as logic, as reason, as intellect, to believe or not to believe in such a highly abstract concept is absurd. When the Shabd is Guru, now please listen to this statement also. When the Shabd is Guru, there cannot be any formal representation of this concept. How can we worship a Shabd in whatever form it may be presented? It can only be discerned and reflected upon. This statement of Baba Nanak is of the cosmological order. To believe or not to believe are the questions raised in the sociology of religion. Even Buddha said that whether God is or is not is an irrelevant question. How can one believe in something that does not exist in the sociological sense? For existence in any sense of the term is ephemeral. There is another enunciation of Baba Nanak that is even more radical. Na ho, na main ho, howa Nanak sabd vichar. Neither I was, nor I am, nor I will be. There is no past, no present, no future. These divisions belong to the physical world. In the cosmic universe, time is indivisible, eternal. At this level of reflection, the very notion of existence is challenged. God does not exist, for this being is beyond existence and non-existence. If this being exists, it cannot be God. If God is defined as truth, Sach Khand Vase Nirankar, Aad Sach, Jugad Sach, Heavy Sach, Nanak Hosi Bhi Sach. You see, such is not just a matter of lies and truth and falsehood. Such is a highly metaphysical concept in the phraseology of Guru Nanak. That such was there even before the creation of Brahman. Jugad such, when the historical period started, that the historical stages, different stages were also held by such. Such was the criterion that decided what's wrong, what is right, what is profane, what is sacred. In Siddh Ghosh, Guru Nanak says, Sach bina sucha ko nahi. It is such that decides what is such or is not such. It is not some metaphysical precaution. You should go there, do this, do that. You see, that's not such and such. You see, this is very important in Guru Nanak's philosophy. Such and such, they go together. So these are a few things that I wanted to talk about in the context of Guru Nanak. Because Guru Nanak's discourse, the epistemological discourse, as I said again and I repeat, is a definitive epistemological cut in the tradition. It should be taken as it is. Now, finally, I would like to read a few shlokas in my interpretation to end the first part of my lecture. This is Guru Tegh Bahadur. From one verse to another, the restless mind is lost in wilderness. Nanak, meditate and reflect and fear not the inevitable. In spite of all my efforts and endeavors, there is no peace, no serenity. Nanak, in ignorance and dualities, only the Creator can help the devotee. All dreams are lost, all desires have floundered. Nanak, in despair and depression, the end has caught the destitute. All efforts and there was none to encounter suffering and serenity. Nanak, what is destined is decided. The will of the Creator surmounts all deeds and dexterity. Then we continue. The being is stuck in bondage, in burden. Nanak, meditate and reflect with sincerity and trust. There is no Ram, no Ravan, no family, no friends. All had to submit to the eternal time. Nanak, nothing stays in this dreamland of humanity. I would like to repeat this because there are efforts to present Tegh Bahadur as a devotee of Ram or this or that. Guru Tegh Bahadur is very clear. There is no Ram, no Ravan, no family, no friends. All had to submit to the eternal time. Nanak, nothing stays in this dreamland of humanity. This is shlok number 50. For untoward and unexpected, there is depression and despair. Nanak, the will of the Creator prevails over all affairs. Whosoever born dies, joya so jealousy of Nanak. It's all a matter of days. Nanak, discern and tune in the divine music, avoid all futile ways. And finally, the shlok number 57. There is but unique sovereign. There is but one supreme creator. Nanak, in meditation and reflection, there is cosmic vision and perception. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gill. It was very enlightening talk. And I have received one comment from Professor Gurminder Kaur Pogal. She says, I'm currently listening to the fascinating talk by Professor Gill. He gave a very succinct definition of Nirankar that I did not fully note down. Please, can you ask him to repeat this? So she's asking a question that you gave the definition of Nirankar.
Let me, yes, thank you. Thanks for the comment. I would like to clarify it a little with the statement of Guru Nanak in Japji, Sach Khand Vase Nirankar.
Right.
For Nanak, Sach and Nirankar. See, Nirankar, of course, is Nirankar without akar, without any form, without any time. As in the beginning of Guru Mantra, Nirankar is First of all, Nirankar is called such, the creator. Ekankar Sat Nam. The designation of Nirankar is Sat. Then Nirankar is beyond time and space and is not born, he doesn't die, and all that. Then the statement, such Khand was Nirankar. In the realm of truth dwells the formless, the Nirankar. So Nirankar and such, see, these are two important. First of all, the Nirankar is formless, that's fine, beyond time and space and all that. The question is that the concept of truth for Guru Nanak is of the same order that is Nirankar. That is, for Guru Nanak, such a Nirankar is one and the same thing. You see, like, you know, in all religions, there are so many definitions of creator. God is this, God is this, God is that. For Guru Nanak, he begins by saying Nirankar, without akar, without birth and death, etc., without time and space. Then he says, then immediately after that, Ad such, Jugad such, Habi such, Nanak Hosindi such. There was truth in the beginning of the beginning, when even the Brahman was not created. Then you have the second stage, Jugad such, the historical times. Then Habi such, the present is also held by the same truth. Then he says Hosi be such. In the future, when there will be, like in our tradition, they say Parlo, when even the Brahman will not be there. That means in the very beginning there was such, in the very end there will be such, and in between also such is a metaphor that is synonymous with Nirankar. So this is now why I insist on this is that this is also a certain discerning, certain discourse, metaphysical discourse of Guru Nanak that differentiates this discourse from all other epistemological discourses of other religions. For example, this is why his discourse on suffering also, because we must realize when Guru Nanak says that the lamp of enlightenment is lit by the oil of suffering, this statement completely differentiates him from all other religions. All religions, whether it is Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, or all religions, in all religions, their main, Buddhism especially, their main purpose is that this world is suffering, there is suffering, and there should be some remedy. Suffering is considered bad. There are temples which are called Sankat Mochan, and we have also Gurdwaras called Dukhanwar. You go to a temple, to a Gurdwara, to a mosque, to be able to get rid of suffering. And here comes Guru Nanak, the philosopher, who says, no, suffering, dukh daru, sukh rog pyar. Dukh is actually remedy. It is sukh that is rog. And this is why, see, this is why I want to make it very clear that the metaphysical discourse of Guru Nanak is fundamentally different from the discourses of all other religions, because there are so many similarities in religion. But you see, Guru Nanak as a philosopher, even his understanding of life and death, jo aya so jealousy. This is the first normal statement. Then he says, na koi aave, na koi jaye. And to the extent na ko hoya, na koi hoya. Even the existence, see that ultimately Nirankar is beyond existence and non-existence. These categories of existence and non-existence do not apply to Nirankar. I presume this.
Gurbir, can you put the mic for Professor Louis Phonetic?
Yes, Dr. Lou Phonetic, I am allowing you to talk now. You should be able to speak.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Hey, Sat Sri Akal, everyone. And thank you, Pashaura Singh, for putting on this fascinating panel. And thank you, Dr. Saab, for your wonderful talk on Guru Tegh Bahadur. I really enjoyed your discussion of Sach in the Bani of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And one of the things that's always struck me about Guru Nanak's Bani in regard to Sach is that he speaks, and I think you've pegged this perfectly, of multiple levels of truth. One of the shabds which has impacted me throughout my life is something we find in Guru Nanak's Siddhi Rag, of him with which I'm sure many of you are familiar, Sacho Aur Sabko Uppar Sachachar. That in many ways, truth is indeed everywhere, permeates everything. It's the highest thing. But at the same time, even higher is manifesting truth in your life. And I see this as, again, manifesting multiple levels of such, underscoring how nuanced such is in the thought of Guru Nanak. But of course, this is a panel on Guru Tegh Bahadur. And I'd like to know your opinion on how Guru Tegh Bahadur's sacrifice aligns with this particular shabd from the Bani of the first master. Thank you. I'll mute myself now.
Well, thanks very much for your excellent comment. I entirely agree with you. As far as how it applies to Tegh Bahadur, I think it's very simple that historically speaking, there are victims like the Brahmins from Kashmir, and then there is also the question of the farmers and all that. You know, these are the issues which are of the anthropological, historical level. Kud Raja, Kud Parja, Kud Sab Sansar. But then, if we think of Guru Tegh Bahadur as somebody who fought for one cause or another, I don't think that is the real issue. This is why I brought in Guru Nanak, that Guru Tegh Bahadur was following the epistemological discourse of Guru Nanak, and his sacrifice must be envisaged in the in the cosmic, at the cosmic level, where Guru Nanak says, that the sacrifice of Guru Tegh Bahadur is an ultimate triumph of such over Kud. That's how I try to understand it.
Another question is from Gurdas from England. Great point that the issue was between state and society and not Hindu, Sikh or versus Muslim. Is there any reading to research farmers' issues which Mr. Gill mentioned?
Please repeat, I didn't understand.
He's trying to say that is there any references or readings about farmers' issues in Guru Tegh Bahadur's Bani or, historical references?
Well,
Yeah.
Guru Tegh Bahadur, I do not know, but all that I was talking about the discourse of Guru Nanak, which is, as far as I consider, it is also the discourse of Tegh Bahadur. And here is, I can refer to an excellent thesis of a young scholar, Kamaldeep Randhawa. It is called Sach Khand Vase Nirankar, and it is published by Nad Pragas in Amritsar and distributed by Singh Brothers. And in there, it is all these themes are treated in great detail and in highly crystallized form. If somebody, but that book is in Punjabi. Those who can read Punjabi can. It's a fairly, it's a 300 pages book, and all these themes which I discussed are discussed in detail in that book. If those who are interested, they can have a look at it.
Well, next question is from Professor Sahota. He's saying, thank you for the wonderful and insightful lecture. I have several questions, but will ask only this for the moment. How do you situate what appears to be a rich dialectical way of thinking in these texts, with emphasis on the mediation of opposites, for example, astic and Gnostic?
Yes, of course, of course. Wait, of course, that is the whole point. That you see, there are two ways. First of all, whenever you study something, there is the deductive aspect and there is the inductive aspect. First of all, we must know what is a discourse, how a discourse, any discourse is configured. And then second question is how Gunanic constitutes its discourse. You see, Gunanic's discourse is slowly and slowly. He first of all addresses himself to the enthological level. Then slowly and slowly, one after the other, there is a cosmological level, you see. And they are all, see, this is exactly the point. They are all dialectically interrelated with each other. This is why they cannot be taken out, one small talk or some one micro concept or concept and taken it outside and try to understand. We can understand the Gunanic's discourse, and for that matter, any discourse, in terms of how the concepts are, which are in a way like ask nast, like na koi aave, na koi jaye, na ko hoya, na ko hoye. You see, existence, non-existence, and to be or not. See, ask and ask you can also translate as to exist or not to exist, to be or not to be. See, there are so many ways to ask and ask, normally astic, but it is not necessary that we should talk only about theist or theist, but also about to be or not, to exist or not to exist. So these are all opposition, but these are, we must realize, they are not oppositions in the sense of opposing each other. They are conceptual oppositions. These oppositions are in a way both opposing and interrelated. You see, that dialectics is a very complex affair. Dialectics is not simply opposition of each other. Dialectics, in a way, the being, I explained to you what is dialectics in simple terms. The being and the other. Some people think that the other is being and the other are in opposition of each other. No, being and other derive their being from each other. Without the other, the being doesn't exist, doesn't mean anything. You see, there is being and there is the other. They are dialectically interrelated with each other. You see, this is why ask and nask are not two independent entities. I mean, conceptually speaking. Question is, we are here talking in conceptual terms and metaphysical terms and not on normal terms of grammar.
Next question is from Roma Kaur. She says, we see acceptance of dukh and sukh in the excellent talk by Dr. Gill. But in Sukhmani Sahib, Guru Sahib says, Dukh par har sukh kar la ja. But this is not Sukhmani Sahib, this is Japji Sahib. It is indicating doing Nam Simran removes dukh from life. And we see that because of dukh happening around by the rulers, Guru Sahib raised sword. He could have said, accept the dukh as hukum of Nirankar. If you can elaborate on this point, it will be helpful.
See, first of all, the question of dukh is not an ordinary dukh that you are suffering from something and some disease or something. Dukh is a highly metaphysical concept. It is the same, actually, as far as the concept is concerned, there is no difference between Buddhist understanding of suffering and Gunanic's understanding of suffering. Suffering is there. The only question is, what is suffering? Suffering in Gunanic's terms is, suffering leads to, see, when the Gunanik says, Dukh daru. Dukh means, you see, it is a state, it is a It is see, suffering is an existential state of such santokh and sanjam. You see, when in suffering, existentially a being is in the state of sat santokh sanjam, and it is this state where a being in suffering tries to reflect, try to meditate, try to discern the reality of the cosmos, reality of the being, the reality of the Brahman. And when you are Sokh is indulgence and decay and decadence. This is how Guru Nanak tries to see. The point is, this is the discourse of Guru Nanak, and we should not try to understand some talk here or some line from some other place. See, a discourse is constituted by a series of micro and macro conceptual constructs. And they are not just isolated terms here and there. That way you can prove anything. That doesn't mean anything. This is how generally people do. See, they want to prove anything, they always go to one line, which is out of context. And by the way, context does not mean a shabd or even a bani. The context is the whole discourse of Guru Nanak. Okay? If you take out a concept out of the definitive discourse, well, then what can we do? See, book here is not some physical disease. This is a metaphysical, highly charged metaphysical concept, and it is in existential terms. This is also important. You see, it is primarily an existential state. It's not a physical state, okay? And it has to be reflected upon. See, it is a state that leads to discernment, to understanding, to comprehension. This is why he said the lamp of enlightenment is lit by the oil of suffering. This statement is of the highest cosmic, epistemological order, which is very different, which differentiates clearly the discourse of Guru Nanak and consequently the discourse of Sikhism from the discourse of all other religions.
Yeah. There's another question, sir. I would like to know whether Sikhism believes in miracle, wish for such thing. Don't go, because Bear talks on such topics in class, which is associated with miracles. He or she may be in a class where they talk about miracles. So the question is, Sikhism believes in miracles or not? I don't think this is related to the...
I have nothing much to say about it.
Yes. There's another question from Harjeet Singh. In the Shabd Kaun Mua Re Kaun Mua, Brahm Gyani Mil Karo Vichara, it's mentioned that na koi aaya, na koi gaya, to chalt bhaya. Does it relate to what Dr. Gill is explaining right now?
Well, in a way, yes.
So we have come to the end of questions and answers. Let me check. Somebody has written in the chat box. There's nothing. Well, thank you, Dr. Gill. It was excellent talk on Guru Nanak's discourse on suffering and life and death. And you related very well with Guru Tegh Bahadur's Bani and the sacrifice he made. I came to know about you from Professor Henry Gleason. I started teaching classical Punjabi and I was teaching sacred language of the Sikhs at the University of Toronto in 1990. And he used to sit in my class and then he will come to my office and correct me, at number of points, and make me aware of grammatical construction and so on. he was always admiring you very much, Professor Gleason. And I had that desire to see you someday, because he was very fond of your work, and he was highly appreciative of your work. So do you have any memories, good memories about Professor Gleason when you worked with him for your doctoral thesis?
Yes, after all, he was my first teacher, he was guru. See, we met at Deccan College, Pune. He had come as a visiting professor, and I had gone there as a research scholar from Punjab University. And we, at Deccan College, Pune, he taught us, the fellows, for a year. And then he went back to the States, and this is where he got me a fellowship from National Science Foundation, NSF. And I worked with him for 3 years for my doctorate, and I stayed one more year there. And Professor Gleason, Mrs. Gleason, and their children. I mean, we were a family. I mean, he was my not only guru, but also my father, mother, children. We were very, I mean, that is the first, my first real proper scholarly relationship, but also very personal relationship. And I miss him very much.
Well, we now come to the next part of this conversation. University of California, Riverside, and particularly the Dr. Jasveer Singh Saini Endowed Chair in Sikh and Punjabi Studies. Through this, we try to honor distinguished scholars who have made contribution in the field of Sikh studies. When I was going through your language of the Adi Granth, I was really impressed, and that prompted me to get in touch with you to invite you for this conference as a keynote speaker. And this is our humble, small effort to recognize scholars at the global level. And we are really proud of your contribution. And now I would like to ask Tegh Singh to say a few words. Tegh.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who is joining us today. As mentioned, Dr. Harjeet Singh Gill is an internationally acclaimed linguist. He is a professor emeritus at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, Punjabi University, Patiala, and Guru Nanak Dev University, Amritsar. Dr. Gill was born in Amritsar in 1935. He studied at Khalsa College, Amritsar, Government College, Ludhiana, and Deccan College, Pune, 1956 to 1958. He did his MA and PhD in Linguistics in 1962 under Professor Henry A. Gleason from Harvard, USA, and produced a reference grammar of Punjabi, followed by the publication of the Linguistic Atlas of Punjab. Dr. Gill started working with André Martinet in France. In 1968, Punjabi University at Patiala invited him to establish the Department of Anthropological Linguistics. He developed a semiotic methodology to analyze literary, cultural, and sacred texts. Dr. Gill, along with his students, worked in areas as varied as structuralism, dialectology, language and culture, folklore, arts, and religion. University Grants Commission of India nominated him National Professor of Linguistics in 1986, and Punjabi University conferred on him Honorary D.Litt in 1997 for his contribution to Punjabi language and literature, culture, and folklore. Dr. Gill's publications include 3 volumes of Structures of Signification, Semiotics of Conceptual Structures, Semiotic Discourses such as St. Julian, Puran Bhagat, Hi Ranja, and interpretive discourses of Guru Nanak, Machhiwada, Hi Ranja, and other legends of Punjab. He was the first Indian scholar to be invited to contribute to Encyclopedia of Britannica's Encyclopedia of Semiotics. Dr. Gill is known for his translations from French, English, and Punjabi. His translations of Japji of Guru Nanak and Jap Sahib of Guru Gobind Singh into English and French are noteworthy. His more recent publications, The Language of the Adi Granth, with phonetic transcription of the entire text of the Granth in 2019 and the Cosmic Vision of Baba Nanak 2020 have won for him this Lifetime Achievement Award today. Congratulations, Dr. Gill, for all that you have achieved. And if you'd like to share a few words on this, please do so now.
The University of California, the Dr. Jasveer Singh Saini Endowed Chair in Sikh and Punjabi Studies honors Harjeet Singh Gill with a Lifetime Achievement Award for his distinguished contribution to the language of the Adi Granth with phonetic transcription of the entire text. Riverside, California, Saturday, November 13th, 2021.
Well, first of all, I would naturally thank the University of California and Professor Pashaura Singh and his colleagues, his friends for this honor. I would like to add only that that this work, this transcription. See, I used to transcribe and type 2 or 3 pages every day. Then my colleague and friend Mukhtar Singh Gill used to read the proofreading, used to do proofreading, and we used to discuss at length. So I would like to share this honor with my friend, Professor Mukhtar Singh Gill. I would also like to mention Ranjit, his wife, who was an extraordinary, for her extraordinary hospitality during this time of stress and strain, because transcribing any text is a very difficult job, but the question of transcribing Adi Granth, especially for a Sikh, is a very sensitive affair. So we try to be as close and faithful to the text as possible. As a matter of fact, the first 200 pages were revised 3-4 times because we used to see some new patterns. And what I would like to say that our experience is that the way, see, our basis of our the text, basic text was as published by the SGPC. There are some controversies here and there about some parts, but as far as we are concerned, we thought that it is an extremely consistent and regular text. For example, in all the 1430 pages, there are extreme consistencies, like you see Pagat and Pagti, Siddh and Siddhi. When it is a question of noun, it is without Syari, Tata without Syari. Whenever it is in the sense of Pagti, it is always Syari with Tata. Siddhi is also Syari with Siddha, and not even once there is any discrepancy. Now the problem that I would like to point out, it is not necessary to do this at this juncture, but the problem is that why even we try to, why this effort that was made. The problem is that it is a language of 15th and 16th century. It is about 500 years old. The vowel structure of the language of Adi Granth is very different from the vowel structure of modern Punjabi. For example, there is binary opposition between long and short vowel. You see, O, and E, and E. Okay? But in the 15th and 16th century, in the language of the Adi Granth, there is no opposition in the final position. You see, in the initial position, in the middle position, there is a position of short U and long U, and short E and long E. But in the final position, it is not. But this final position is very frequent in Bani. Take, for example, first of all, I would like to make this statement that take Sukhmani. The very first line of Sukhmani is mispronounced by practically every Granthi in every Gurdwara. You see that Ad Gure Name. Now Gure, it is not Gure. There is Gur, and after that E and La. You see, it is Gu Re. Sat Gu Re. Rara, there is no La or Dulaya on Ra. It is neither Re nor Ra. It is Ra, like Hai, like Gai. And every single Granthi in every single Gurdwara mispronounces this first line. Secondly, you have Simro. The problem of Simro is very, very complex because Simro, it is again, Simro, there is no O or O on Rara. It is Ra, and after that there is Ura and Ankar. Ra. It is short vowel, Simro, and it is imperative. See, grammatically speaking, I give you an example. Katho, katho, kya main jor. The first is, see, katho, katho, on tatha there is a kanoda, O, and with A it becomes A. Katho means what is interpreted, jisti katha hoi hai, and akatho, jisti katha nahi hoi. The second word is katho. This tha, it is not, there is no hoda or kanoda, there is tha and ude, uda and ankar. This means this is imperative. Jis di katha nahi hoi, us di katha karo. What has not been interpreted, be interpreted. See, the first is past tense, the second is imperative. You understand? And similarly, and this form of O, short form, is very, very frequent in Granth Sahib. Not even a single page, even on any single page there is. Then there is the question of Ankar and Shari. For example, Gur. We have Gur, Rara, Shari, Gur, Rara, Ankar. Gur, Rara, Shari, that is subject. And Gur, Rara, Ankar, that is object. Now here there is since we are talking about this, I would like to point out why there are all these problems of the mispronunciation and misinterpretation of Gurban. See, what happened is, you see, deductively, all religions have their independent epistemological discourse. Similarly, all languages, by definition, have their own grammar. We cannot impose the grammar of one language on the other. See what Sahib Singh did. See, Sahib Singh's Vyakaran, Bani Vyakaran, actually had nothing to do with Bani. It is the Vyakaran of Sanskrit. He imposed the 8 cases of Sanskrit and he tried to understand Gurbani in those terms. Interestingly, and very interestingly, you see, his books have a preface written by a very important linguist, Sudeshwar Verma. Now, Sudeshwar Verma, in that preface states very clearly that modern Indian languages have lost 8 cases since several hundred years ago, practically a couple of thousand years ago. You see, and they cannot be applied to understand modern Punjabi. What probably happened, and I just presume, that Sahib Singh did not understand what Sudeshwar Verma did, and he used it as a preface. Actually, this preface you see, nullifies the whole effort of Sahib Singh. You see, he says that what Sahib Singh has done, it is not at all, this is not the way Punjabi can be understood. But either Guru Sahib Singh's English was not very good, or his understanding of grammar was not very good. Now, see, this is another problem. What happens is, for example, directly speaking, is grammar. In grammar, see, within a grammar, you can have any rule, but your rules are fairly fixed, straightforward. Like in driving, you can either drive left or you can drive right. For example, in India, you drive left. In America, you drive right. See? But you cannot drive both left and right. See? In each, you see, whenever Sahib Singh tries to explain some category, he says, this is possible, that is possible, that 3, 4, 5 things are possible. This is not grammar. Why so? He says so because he's trying to understand the grammatical categories of Punjabi, of the 15th century Punjabi, in terms of Sanskrit, which is several thousand years old. And that has led, you see, to not very good consequences, because that way you cannot understand. See, you have to understand the discourse of Sikhism in terms of the discourse of Guru Nanak. Within how this discourse is constituted, it is a unique discourse. The same way, if you want to understand the language of Punjabi, that is the grammar of Punjabi. It is from within the grammar of Punjabi that the grammar of Punjabi emerges. We can only say each language has different grammar. How is different? That is an inductive affair. Then you study the rules and regulations from within the language, Punjabi language, and then there is no problem. You see, there is so this is why the need of the hour is to respect the discourse of the other, the grammar of the other. And there is a unity in diversity. There is no unity in uniformity. That's how I see things. Thank you very much.
It's great explanation of Gurbani, of grammar of Gurbani. Perhaps, we were all studying Professor Sahib Singh very diligently. And now there's a need to read Harjeet Singh Gill's work diligently and try to, understand the real discourse of Sikhism. Well, now we have some extra time. Tejpal, Gurbir, Adam, you have any questions to Professor Gill?
I believe a question was dropped in the Q&A if we want to answer that one first.
Yeah.
So GS Hota asks Dr. Gill, could you say something about the difference in case meanings between Old Punjabi? For instance, what happens to the dative fourth case of Sanskrit between Punjabi and Sanskrit?
You see, the problem is that when we talk about cases, case simply means that it is in an inflection. You see, there is a word and there is no postposition. In Punjabi or even all modern Indian languages, Hindi, Bengali, Gujarati, there are what we call proposition. Usnu, usne, onne. You see, phane ne, phane ton. See, there are different words. See, these are in Sanskrit, they are all put together and then they take different forms. Their meanings are different ones. See, slowly and slowly, the case forms were dropped. And now when we talk about case form at all, we say there is a direct case and there is a oblique case. You see, the direct case is simply subject-object, and oblique case, if there is a postposition after that, it is an oblique case. Like, for example, the question of gur. When you have a gur with rara with syari, that is an oblique case. The guru ne, guru no, guru ne, ja guru da, ja guru. After that, there will be some kind of proposition. And if gur, there is a rara and onkar, that is an object. That is, see, this one is a subject, the other is an object. Now, if you try to understand in terms of Sanskrit cases, you have to understand it, because they don't follow the rules of that. See, first of all, from cases, postpositions have evolved. And then secondly, their semantic ranges have also changed. You see, form and content go together. This is why, for example, the question of why should part and should part. You see, in the question, in the signification in the 17th century theory of signification, when you pronounce a word, utter a word, there is the resonance of the word. The resonance of the word itself is significant. Then from this resonance, you don't go to the word, but you go not to the object, but to the image of the object. So it is called quaternary definition. This is why, for example, in our tradition, Kirtan is very important. The very sound of the word, the very resonance of Gurbani is significant. You see? So now since it is so we have to see, when we talk about Shuddh Shabd, see, if your part is a Shuddh, this is another thing what I wanted to say, is that, well, first of all, there are so many, technical problems of grammar and all that. Secondly, what I always suggest is that if nothing else, please read Gurbani slowly. If you read slowly and you pay attention to every word, generally speaking, quite a few shuddhis will be taken care of. What happens is, see, our tradition of part, which is at a very, so when you read at a very high speed, naturally all these small things are, you don't notice. So my first advice would be, please read Gurbani slowly, word by word. That is half the game. And then, of course, some technical things here and there. That is, but important thing is this is why Shuddh and Ashuddh is important. The very, now take for this is that. For example, Punjabi language is called tone language. Now, how tone is realized or pronounced? Every Punjabi tone has two syllables. One major syllable, the beginning, and then the final syllable, which is fairly short. Now, we were talking about the excellence of Bhai Gurdas and Guru Arjan. You see, they were so sensitive to even Punjabi tones and intonation. You see, they are you see, Lalla and Le. For example, Rakhan Har, Rak Le Nidan. It is Lalla, La, and then E, Idi, and Sari. Le. Then Nanak Birtha Koe Na He, Ha, La, and then Idi and Sari. You see, the first vowel, first is He, but it is not He and Le. It is Le, He. See how sensitive was Bhai Gurdas and then Guru Arjan, because off and on, there is written Shuddh Kiche. Guru Arjan was an editor. He read every word, every line of what Bhai Gurdas said. You see, and this is very, very important. This is why even the question of people say, well, how does it matter whether you say Ad Gure or Ad Gurai? This is very important. You see, the very sound, the very resonance. First of all, these are grammatical categories, like Simro. It is imperative. See, if it is Simro or Simro, that will be past tense. First of all, there are grammatical problems. Even if when there are no grammatical problems, then it is a question of resonance. And resonance is very important. See, if if I could ask, and then of course, then there is another very serious problem. Those who are reading Granth carefully, sometimes there are two vowels on the same word, same letter. For example, this shabd bya hoya mere babula, you see, there is a, you have sohandi with a hoda, then sohandi with a ankar, then last line, har sat sat mere babula, har jan mil janj sohandi. This is sohandi. There is a o sasa, and on top of it is hoda, and on the same sasa there is a ankar. Now what is it? This is a combination of two vowels. You see, in several languages, for example, in French, there is a word for sister, sœur, S-O-E-R. O and E are the two vowels, but it is a diphthong. It is pronounced as one vowel. So this only is whenever there are two vowels. This is O and O, and it is O. This is neither O nor O. It is O. It begins with O and ends with short O. Obviously, it is very difficult to pronounce. It is not our modern Punjabi, but then Gurbani is very important. Gurbani cannot be pronounced with the pronunciation of Tantar. See, that is not right. See, if Shabd is Guru, then Shabd we should respect the way Gurbani is written. You see, there are, when we were transcribing, we had so many problems. For example, the question of first of simple transcription pronunciation, like the linguists always do. But then there was a question of, a certain pattern, certain tradition of writing Gurbani. The question of how spellings, this lay, for example, it was very clearly stated that it is a question of tone. It is lay. They could have stopped at lay, lalla and la. No, they put lay and they ended it with ed siari, lay, then hey. And so it is so. But the final syllable is so short that we hardly hear it, but it is there. And Guru and Bhai Gurdas was extremely sensitive to these, and also intonation. You see, for example, there are sometimes there are sajja. You see, there are ape. See, jo kish kare so ape. You see, tere paane vich amrit vasa tu paane. The first is paane, the second is paane. Okay, but we must pronounce it properly. Then there are question of different words. Nanak soi sevya, with Bihari, jit sevya vavenu sari, sevya dukh jai. Nanak soi sevye. Nanak, we should serve the one Chit Seve, jis di seva karke dukh jaye. So these are two very different words. Sevya and Sevya. You see, with Sari and Bihari, they are grammatically two different words. So every pronunciation has sometimes it corresponds with grammatical differences, sometimes it corresponds to all the same. We should try as much as possible. Obviously, it is not perfectly, nobody can pronounce properly. But to the extent it is possible, we should try to pronounce Gurbani in a manner. And I think mispronunciation and that is sacrilege. That is not right. We should be careful. I mean, we should try at least to, as much as to show the part. Show the part is not a very good thing. I think so. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful inspiration for us, to explore further, these linguistic accuracies and so on. And we wish you all very well and stay healthy and blessed. Live long for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Thank you. It was so nice of you to invite me. Thanks, the university. Thanks, especially Professor Pashaura Singh, his colleagues, his friends. And as he says, we have never met, but I hope that we will soon meet one day.
Yes. When I come to India, I will definitely meet.
Yeah, thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill.